This is CBC Here and Now.
It's just a mess of confusion for these young children.
It is a religious town, and I don't know why that's an issue, but it's not for me.
I don't want to put us in a situation where Newfoundland is seen as behind or not up to speed.
Our program is really, about accepting one another, supporting one another, spreading kindness.
The fact that they have pulled their kids from the program is evidence that programs like that need to still be happening.
Another rural town under fire tonight for not showing support for the LGBTQ community.
Parents on the Bayvert Peninsula keeping their kids away from a school talk about inclusion and acceptance.
Good evening, I'm Debbie Cooper.
And I'm Anthony Germain. Middle Arm on the Bayvert Peninsula is at the center of controversy as many parents at MSB Regional Academy decided to hold their kids back from school.
They didn't want their children attending a presentation about inclusion and acceptance at the school yesterday. 13 of the 30 students booked for the presentation showed up. It is organized by a group called Get Real and was brought to the school by a provincial grant announced in February.
Now, the school board says the presentation aligns with its safe and inclusive schools policy, but some parents didn't want their children attending for religious reasons. We were in Middle Arm today and spoke to a couple of parents who are disappointed with that decision.
It is a beautiful town and one of the most beautiful places to live, as you can see.
Would you be opposed to having something like this, a diversity presentation given to some of your children?
I'm not opposed, and maybe perhaps they should actually just talk to parents first, and maybe they would feel different about it.
It was granted from the government, so to me, I think it was okay before it came here. All I know is it's blown out of proportion, and it's got a lot of different feelings hurt, and I certainly hope that people come together and resolve it, because small communities don't need this. We need to come together and be as one, not have hurtful feelings.
That's the scene in Middle Arm. So how are advocates in the LGBTQ community reacting to all of this? We asked our Terry Roberts to find out today, and he joins us live from Mount Pearl, where a meeting is taking place this evening to discuss ways to combat prejudice and promote acceptance. Terry?
Well, yes, Debbie, this meeting here tonight was previously planned, but it's timely nonetheless. And as you can see, the library here has rolled out the welcome mat for the LGBTQ community. We have a selection of books here on the issue, and also the now famous rainbow crosswalk as you enter the library. But there's no question about it, there's a lot of disappointment and concern over this latest incident in central Newfoundland. I spoke to the leader of a St. John's group today who helps parents and their children deal with the coming out process, and he said this incident is further proof that this Get Real program that's created this controversy in Middle Arm is sorely needed in all of our schools, and he had this message for the parents who pull their children out of classes.
I would say reflect on why you're upset or why you feel that fear. Kind of look into like an interior of why you're scared of it. Do some research, do some reading, ask your kid if they actually feel the same way, because like honestly we do a lot of projecting onto our children and the youth, so I would like for those parents and those individuals to kind of reflect and just be like, you know what, that's not the way we should be treating each other. We should be coming from an understanding of love and respect and kind of grow with each other and not put up those barriers.
Now, this Get Real program is fully supported by the school board, as you mentioned earlier, and it's meant to try to break down prejudice, promote unity and foster compassion. But Charles Murphy says this reaction by the parents in Middle Arm, he's called it a little bit scary.
If I would have heard that when I was younger, I probably would have taken even longer to come out as being bisexual. So the concept of someone saying a gay class not going to it kind of makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Terry, this isn't the first controversial issue like this in central Newfoundland in recent weeks.
Well, that's right. I mean, people are still talking about the conflict in Springdale, for example, where the council refused to allow a rainbow crosswalk to be painted in that town. Now, here we have what really is a conflict between what many see as their parental rights, in many cases their religious beliefs, and the right of students as they prepare to make their way in the world. Now, I spoke to a university professor today who said parents need to just trust their children.
The strength of our communities is based on how we're able to pull together and build the world together, right? And if you're not reaching out to people, if you're not finding ways to include people, then you lose their strengths, you lose the things that they have to offer the community, and we all have so much to offer each other.
I find with rural Newfoundland, like that's where a lot of this backlash is coming from, and I don't know if it's because they're smaller communities that don't really get the same kind of support that St. John's in general does, because it's the capital. So it could be the fact like they're just not getting the proper funding to kind of get more education out there, to get an understanding.
Now, with all this as a backdrop, you can be sure that the discussion at this meeting here tonight will be even more relevant. And by the way, tomorrow is International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. Reporting live for Here and Now, I'm Terry Roberts.
Well, more than half a junior high class in Middle Arm was pulled out of attending an inclusion seminar set for the school. Only 13 out of 30 students at MSB Regional Academy attended the workshop. Some parents complained publicly they didn't want their children attending because of religious reasons. So what was the presentation teaching? It was organized by a group called Get Real. Marley Bowen is Executive Vice President of Get Real, who's originally from Norris Point, but now lives in Toronto. Well, thanks for joining us, Marley.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, what is Get Real all about?
Well, Get Real is a nonprofit organization based out of Toronto. Essentially, what we do is we run inclusivity workshops with middle schools and high schools across the country. We've spoken from Newfoundland to Vancouver, about 150,000 students across the country to date. And our program is really, about accepting one another, supporting one another, spreading kindness, and learning that, everyone is a little different. We all kind of have a story to share and a voice to be heard.
So what do you think of the decision by many parents to keep their children from attending Get Real's presentation, or as some called it, the gay class?
It's definitely not a gay class. I try to, say like, I don't know every single family, and, I don't want to judge, parents' decisions or, every family kind of thing. I think it is sad that the students didn't get to experience, what we do deliver in a classroom, and what we deliver is something very positive. We really expose students to different types of people. It's all about learning and education. Definitely never tell a student how to feel or how to be. So it's definitely tough to see, such a small turnout, especially when we're only kind of in that area, once every couple of years.
What would the students, Marley, have heard if they'd been at that presentation yesterday?
Well, they would have heard two stories from two different people. One would have been from a transgender man who really shares his experiences, being transgender and what that's kind of been like for him growing up, and the struggles that he faced, in high school and in junior high, with just not having a lot of education on the topic. They also would have heard from a straight male who was adopted from Peru, and he would have talked about his experiences growing up in a white family, always knowing what it felt like to be a little bit different, but also knowing the importance of being kind to each other and supporting one another despite those differences.
So I understand there were about 13 students there. They got these very personal messages from two of the people with Get Real. Some of the people on social media, the parents said they didn't want their children, quote, indoctrinated by the liberal moral compass, and others cited biblical morals for keeping the students out. I'm just wondering, how common is this type of reaction across the country?
This reaction definitely isn't across the country. We've spoken to tons and tons of students. We've never had a reaction to this magnitude of that many students, being held back. In terms of like political views and that kind of thing, we're not a political organization. We don't talk about politics and religion within our workshop. Sometimes students do ask questions on religion, and, we say that our belief is that, all religions are rooted in love and acceptance and spreading that to other people. Those are the kind of things that we try to focus on. We're just about, embracing all different types of people, regardless of, who you are, how you identify. I think we can all agree on support and love for each other.
How discouraging is it to you, though, about what happened in Middle Arm?
I mean, it's definitely discouraging, but it also is motivating at the same time. I think it shows that there's still a lot of work to be done. Maybe the message of who we are wasn't necessarily shown to those students, but 13 students did show up, and 13 students did learn a lot yesterday. And I think it's also really important to kind of remember that not just there wasn't 0 people that showed up. There were some students that were there.
And I'm just wondering, you said maybe not everybody understood what you were all about. So what lessons have you learned as you go forward in talking in other schools?
I mean, I think a lot of, things were twisted yesterday online, especially on Facebook. Obviously people talk a lot online. I think rumors get spread. And I think the word of us, telling people to be gay or be in a gay class, things like that, I think that's definitely incorrect, and that's not who we are. In terms of moving forward, definitely just ensuring that people are aware that we never tell students how to feel or be, and we do speak from our experiences, and I think that is really important for students to hear.
Marley Bowen, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.